Using Search Marketing to Generate Leads for Law Firms with Michael Alaniz, episode 168. Are you ready to make your law firm a profit-generating machine that will free up your time and skyrocket your impact? With more than 2 decades of business growth experience and having proven that you can be successful while prioritizing your family and your impact, introducing the Profit with Law podcast. I am your host, the creator of the Firm Differentiator 10X Effect, Moshe Amsel. Well, hello and welcome to another amazing guest interview here on the Profit with Law podcast. And I have a special treat for you today. We do a lot of talk about marketing here on the show, and we bring in a lot of people who are involved in marketing. But today I have somebody who my coach uses for their Google advertising. And, sometimes when you have a personal connection where you know somebody who's getting true and good results with that person, it creates that extra level of comfort that they really know what they're doing. There's a ton of marketers out there and there's a lot of noise, and you got to know who am I going to listen to, and who's that authority that knows what they're talking about. So when I have somebody who I've got a reason to believe that they're the right person to be having this conversation with, it always makes it easier for me to bring them on the show and to be able to share them with you. So I'm really excited about that. And I'm going to introduce our guest in just a moment. But before I do that, I want to remind you that tickets are on sale right now for the Law Firm Growth Summit. The Law Firm Growth Summit is going to be the most spectacular 3 days that you're going to spend in 2021, hands down. I have no idea if in-person conferences are coming back, but this is going to be the closest you're going to get to an in-person conference from your living room or your office or wherever you're attending from. We're going to have live entertainment. We're going to have actual real networking sessions where you can talk to other people on roundtables, as well as speed dating type of, face-to-face, one-on-one connection capabilities. There's going to be opportunities for you to talk with our vendors, but more importantly, our stages are going to be graced with dozens of speakers who are the leaders in the industry. They know what's going on. They know what's up. And the reality is that COVID has accelerated a fundamental shift in the legal industry. And that is going to continue to happen. And if you don't pay attention and you don't position your law firm to take advantage of that and to be the differentiator in the industry, then come a year, 2 years, 5 years down the road, you may find that you're suddenly irrelevant. One of the best examples I have is look at Blockbuster, look at Netflix. You know why Blockbuster's out of business? Because when Netflix first started, the CEO of Blockbuster went to the board of directors and said, hey, look at this company, Netflix, what they're doing. It's a really cool model. And, you can hold on to the movie as long as you want, but they don't have stores. They don't have, and they've got this digital thing that, you can stream videos. I don't know if that's going to go anywhere, but this mail and DVD thing is kind of really cool. And the board of directors said, we make 13% of our revenue from late fees. There's no way we're going to be doing that. That business model is never going to work. And Blockbuster is no longer here. Blockbuster doesn't exist. Netflix is the premier brand when it comes to where are you going to go for your entertainment, for your video. Now, sure, but there's a lot of competition now for Netflix, but Blockbuster's gone. If you don't have the ability to see where the industry is going, then you end up becoming the Blockbuster rather than becoming the Netflix. And our job over 3 days is going to be to help you see what the future is going to look like and to help you position your firm for that. Now, if that's not worth $50, $100, $200 for you to come and attend, I don't know what is, but it's really accessible to everybody. We've made it really inexpensive. Prices go up regularly as we approach the event. So you want to make sure you grab your tickets today. lawfirmgrowthsummit.com. I promise you, we are going to blow your minds with what we're going to do at this event. So go to lawfirmgrowthsummit.com, register today. We're looking forward to seeing you there February 9th to 11th. Let me share an exciting tool that I recently came across that is a game changer for law firms that bill hourly or by the project, otherwise known as flat fee billing. The 2020 Legal Trends Report published by Clio rates how important various items are in a client choosing your firm. You may be surprised to know that the third most important decision factor for someone choosing a lawyer is the ability to pay with a payment plan. The challenge that law firm owners face is the risk of a client not making good on that payment plan. Most attorneys don't offer payment plans because of that. The problem is now solved with LawFunder. LawFunder allows you to easily add a payment option to all your client invoices and retainer replenishment requests that does not require credit checks, applications, or any other complex process. The client's able to use their existing credit cards, allowing them to earn points and miles, access credit card specials on interest rates, and any other tools they use to manage their cash. When I saw this tool, I was blown away. Most importantly, it removes all the risk from the law firm and makes an easy and painless process to the payment process. So if you want to check off the box on one of the top factors in new client decisions, if you want to decrease your accounts receivable and get paid immediately, LawFunder is the solution. Go to lawfunder.com. That's lawfundar.com/profitwithlaw to learn more. Now, I'm going to bring our guest on the show. Our guest today is Michael Alaniz, and Michael is the CEO and founder of Local Loop Marketing, a marketing firm focusing on digital lead acquisition using PPC platforms. That stands for pay-per-click within Google, Bing, Yahoo, and Facebook. He specializes in paid search advertising and leads their team of digital marketing professionals. Michael, welcome to the show.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
It is my absolute pleasure, and I appreciate the generosity that you have provided by giving us a chunk of your time, a chunk of your day to be here with me and to have this conversation. I want to just start with, my listeners want to know who the heck you are and who's behind the microphone. So give me a brief synopsis of your backstory, how you got into marketing, and specifically serving law firms. How did that come about?
Absolutely. I'll distill this down for you. Nothing ever, I think, we don't wind up typically where we want to, what our plans were to start. I went to film school. I wanted to be a film director and started as an extra on TV sets. So in my mid 20s, I was in the background of like TV shows as playing a cop or a gang member all the time, one or the other. My look lent to those things. And I started to realize,
I knew you looked familiar for some reason.
Yeah, I was on ER actually for a while on the TV show as a cop.
Yeah.
I started to realize, I may end up well into my 50s with a dream still in my back pocket, a script. So I thought, if I want to make something happen, I should just go out there and do it myself. And I spent a lot of time in bookstores, and I was doing script writing and doing small projects in Los Angeles here and there. I came across this magazine one day that I was reading through, and I read about a gentleman that was faxing chiropractors what he called a sales letter. And he was going to teach them how to grow their practice. And I've always loved sales. I had a bartending business through college, and I was able to build up to the point at which we had about 10 independent bartenders serving the Los Angeles area and serving Hollywood. So I thought, what if I could make a business like this? And this was funny, a fax machine back then was like a thing people used a lot. So I thought, what if I could do this, but for my bartending service? And I could potentially package information, teach people how to own a private party service like I do. I did that. One thing leads to another, and I found myself then reading an ebook. And back in the day, you had to purchase download material. It would be like $97 or $47. And in this chapter, the book was called 33 Days to Online Profits. And I thought I was going to be rich in 33 days. So I actually took a week off of work to finish the last few days thinking this is a great investment. Well, one of those sections said you should go to YouTube and find what are called affiliates, people that do what you do, because your competition can actually be one of your greatest allies. So I did that. And that's how I came across another aspiring internet marketer that came on to be a very large person in this space. And we formed a small group of friends. We called ourselves back then Reality Mastermind, and we're like in our 20s. And we thought, what if we document our experience of trying to figure things out? And what began as a bartending product, and I will say this, my first week in launching it, I made $600. And this was at $67 a purchase through PayPal. And it blew my mind that somebody, a stranger, would give me money over the internet for something that I created of value. And it was like I've never done like heavy drugs, but if there was an addiction, I was hooked at that point forward. I want to figure this thing out. So I just began, going down the rabbit hole and going to small conferences that I could afford and getting books that I could read and meeting people. And where things wound me to was one day I realized, and in doing research, that there's this whole world that is being neglected, which is called search. And there was a statistic I read that said if somebody's making a purchase for a product that's even going to be at $10, they're probably going to research on their phone where they could get the best deal from it. And I remember being in a store and looking around and seeing people like looking at products and then going to their phone and researching, could I get this on Amazon cheaper? Could I get it somewhere else? And I know they're trying to figure out how they can make the best choice possible. Excuse me. So I thought, if they're doing this for $10 products, imagine services at $1,000, $2,000, $5,000, etc. And at that time, and still today, Facebook advertising really is, and Instagram advertising, that's the focus for people mostly. And I think it's very powerful, and I'm not here to detract from that. But to not respect the fact that a consumer is going to go proactively try to educate themselves on YouTube and make an informed decision on Google search is leaving a lot of opportunity on the table. So I began it was about 8 years ago, self-study and trying to figure out how could I bring this to the digital marketing space. Excuse me. And most internet marketers at that time were doing something called product launches, which they still do to this day, where there's a set day to purchase. There's like a window of time of, let's say, 3 to 7 days to purchase. And a lot of the internet marketing education out there is created by people that sell information. My background, when I left college and let go of the filmmaking aspect, I was deeply involved in business-to-business sales. I worked for a large corporation called Automatic Data Processing, ADP, and I was selling payroll services. So I was very familiar with B2B interaction.
Yeah, we've never heard of ADP.
Yeah. Huge. I know that in paychecks. So I thought, what if I could combine my sales background with this internet marketing and fill a gap in the market space, because the actual brick and mortar businesses are going to these people selling information, and they're trying to learn from these internet marketers that are not really servicing brick and mortar businesses. They're trying to get other people to become internet marketers like them and sell information. But what about services? And what I like too with the model of that is these professional service providers need marketing on a monthly basis. So that sets my agency up for a residual aspect. This was 8 years ago. The company that I was with downsized, and I had just went to a new firm. I left ADP, and I was like the newest salesperson hired, and they cut 20% of the staff. I was doing great in sales, so I was very surprised when I was called in and unfortunately let go. It was like a big sweep of the whole company. I don't know if they were
right. Doesn't make a lot of sense to get rid of the person who's bringing new clients in, but hey, to each their own, right?
Right. I had a lot of offers from. I had switched from payroll to property casualty insurance, so I was selling to manufacturing companies, and I was selling policies that were a minimum $100,000 a year in premium. And I had a lot of firms in Los Angeles and headhunters that said, hey, we got an offer for you now. So I had a sign-up bonus, company car, all this stuff. It was at that point I decided I'm just going to go for this all in. I'm going to bet on this concept that I have of bringing internet marketing services to professional service companies. I did that, bought the domain Local Loop Marketing, had no clients to speak of. And that was 8 years ago. And here we are today now with 5 employees. And we serve professional service providers, that do sell higher ticket type services. So that led me to law as a wonderful niche for that and what they provide. And that's how I arrived today where I'm at.
That's a very interesting roundabout way of how you got there. It's like, but what's interesting is that You have in common a lot with our audience, because most of our audience are attorneys who were either working for another firm or had the option to work for a firm and collect a decent paycheck and, have a good job, whether it's for a law firm or in-house as in-house counsel and within industry. But they've chosen to go out on their own. And there's something interesting that, us entrepreneurs, there's a certain allure, a certain calling that we have that tells us, that's not for me. And everyone is different as to why it's not for them, but that's not for me. And therefore, I'm going to take a bet on myself and I'm going to take a gamble and I'm going to go and I'm going to take a stab at this. And some people listening to this are just starting to take a stab at it. And some of the people listening to this have been stabbing at it for 20 years. And the beautiful thing is that once you figure out how to be your own boss, it's almost impossible to go work for somebody else anymore. And now we got to navigate all the different challenges that come across our way. You have a team of 5, so all too well that once you figure out that you need a person on your staff, now there's a whole new tool set you need to learn. And it's these different tools that you have to learn along the way that become the challenge. And in growing a business and growing a law firm, particularly. So one of the things that my clients struggle with is in legal, typically you get referrals as your first source of business, and maybe your only source of business, depending on your business model and how long you've been around. But when you hang up your shingle, you go and tell your family and friends, hey, I'm open for business. You go meet other professionals. Hey, I'm open for business. And you start to develop this book of business. Clients come through the door, they refer other people, and that starts to grow on itself. The challenge is when somebody wants to grow faster or they want to be able to grow beyond themselves, there's a certain limit that referral marketing is going to have that's just not going to allow you to necessarily grow as fast or as big as you want to. And you need to start looking for new things. And that's where the challenge comes, because there's so much information out there as to what you need to be doing, what works. I mean, between, hey, I'm going to write blog posts and do SEO. I'm going to host a podcast. I'm going to do, I'm going to do in-person events locally. I'm going to collaborate with other professionals and do things together with them. I'm going to start a networking group. I'm going to, there's so many options on the table as to what is the next step, that I think the first thing that we need to address is paid marketing for me, and at what level? How does somebody know, when am I ready for paid marketing?
Good question. There's 2 things I want to address there. And one is to your audience that, let's say, it seems like you have an audience that they're in transition. They've just decided to start their own firm. Maybe some are fully established, and maybe some listen to this podcast that are fully employed somewhere and maybe are thinking of a jump that's going to come up in the future. There's a spectrum there. What I would say to that person is remember that regardless if you work for a firm or you work for your own firm, you have to get clients. That part of the equation never changes whatsoever. As the business owner, the closer you are to being the one that's handed that check, the more you keep of that check. So you actually have to settle a lot less as a business owner than working for a firm that's going to put a quota on you and gets to put stipulations such as, oh, you can't sell outside of this zip code, or we don't want to take that client on right now, or so-and-so already has that person on their database, you have to relinquish that to them. It doesn't make sense. The numbers don't make sense. So if you're someone that you believe in what you can do, you're better off betting on yourself, just from a numbers standpoint. Now, as far as like, when is it a good fit for someone to get into search marketing? Let's take your Netflix as an example. When I went and sat in years ago when Netflix, with a team of Netflix people, there was a team of about 6 people that simply worked on the landing page of Netflix where you would sign up for that free trial. And this is back when Netflix would actually send you the DVDs in the mail, and then you would keep them. And now it's just streaming. So
I actually love that service way more than the streaming.
This one?
I mean,
Like
back when Netflix first
it's,
started, the streaming, they kind of got like any movie that was out there practically was available on Netflix. And then with licensing and as they grew, they went into more of their own content and they got rid of a lot of the other content that was there. And for me, I wasn't looking for new content. I just wanted a place to watch movies.
yeah.
So, they actually lost me as a subscriber and I never came back. But I'm an oddball compared to, I mean, they've cornered the market. So, I mean,
Yeah.
everybody practically
And
has a Netflix account.
Blockbuster was around like 9 years ago. So my wife and I joked that one of our initial dates was picking out a Blockbuster movie, and now we have two kids and we watch Netflix. So it's this weird. Anyways, that team was saying it was amazing to think like how much time a team spent with a landing page in Netflix, and they were trying to create a market. So a market did not exist at this time. They were trying to create a demand. Um, and they were using paid advertising, trying to create a demand. And then now, of course, like they have all this momentum behind them. So if your service is something that if it's so unique at which there is no demand for this whatsoever, no one even knows about this type of, let's say, legal services that one provides, even then someone does need some sort of advertising. Now, it may not be search because no one is actually proactively looking for that. You're going to have to go interruption marketing, such as getting in front of them when they least expect it. And a great place for that, to be honest, is YouTube. YouTube is even though I work in Instagram, Facebook, and Google, YouTube is by far the most powerful platform I work inside of. And it's a subset of Google Ads, which has multiple networks. Now let's take a business where we know people are aware of the service and there's going to come a point, there's a catalyst at which they need the service. And that's what's unique about like a law firm. Like I have two kids, and right now I don't go searching for a child custody attorney because I'm not divorced. I don't need that. If an event was to happen and I suddenly needed that, I would absolutely be searching for that service and want to make an informed decision on who I'm going to go with. So what's unique for a lawyer is that they really cannot create demand, nor, it's not going to be beneficial to go like, well, let's get people divorced, so therefore they need a child custody attorney. They're not going to do that. But to not be available when someone is looking for the child custody attorney is neglecting a hot buyer. That's a hot lead, very similar to someone that is a referral. And I've always, when I was at ADP, I was a sales trainer as well. And I said, there's two sales that have to be made in every sale. The two sales are this. One is the person has to decide they need the service. The second one is who's going to provide the service. So you want to be in the position where we know they need the service. We're not trying to make them believe they need the service, because typically the companies that make you believe you need the service don't end up being the ones that sell it either. So if the need is already there, search is the place where one is able to be throwing their hat into the selection process. And that is so powerful because you can limit the amount of budget you spend. You can, say, I want to only spend in these cities or zip codes. And you can even get so specific that the search query must include these specific words. So we're not going to accidentally pay for traffic that we don't need. And attorney clients have been my best type of clients amongst others that I have, but of all of them, attorney clients are amazing to the point at which I have some attorney clients that I've had for since my inception that I talk to twice a year, and we're fully on autopilot for them. The leads come in, I can track them. They then give me some feedback on what to do and with tweaking it. And when you're ready, I do have for your audience a very specific tactic that they should be implementing to help them get leads in whatever, I guess, focus they have within law itself. But yeah, so if there is a need for your service, search is a must.
So when you're dealing with search, are you talking about like having an ad that's direct to, hey, call us now, or like what is the ad actually saying when somebody's searching? So they're searching, hey, I'm looking for a divorce attorney in Des Moines, Iowa. What does your ad say that's going to compel somebody to say, hey, let me check this firm out?
Sure. Well, here's one of my little fun secrets that took me years to figure out. First off, I think every attorney ad should say know your rights on it. For some reason, that piece of copy, when it's integrated into an ad, converts very well. Know your rights. whatever service an attorney provides, that person is not accidentally looking for a divorce attorney, an estate planning attorney, a criminal defense attorney, child custody. They need that attorney. There's no accidents about that. So the ad, most importantly, should be very direct, and it should state the service of what it is. So it will state very plainly, child custody attorney. Know your rights is a really good piece of copy to add. The thing it needs to include that I find has worked well for us is segmentation, meaning this. Let's say an attorney does child custody, and it doesn't matter if a woman calls them or a man calls them, whomever, a grandparent, even grandparents' rights, they have rights too, and they call a lot trying to gain custody of their grandchildren. Unfortunately, when like drugs are involved with the family, that attorney can service all of them. What we realized is that we started making segmented marketing where we would have child custody attorney for dads. And then now we're targeting in the platform males only, very easy, but our landing page speaks to the fact that we represent fathers. So even though that attorney would work with a dad, a mom, whomever, the segmentation gets us so narrow that now when the searcher is there and showing up, and lo and behold, it's a dad, but we've targeted males, and it's stating that child custody attorney, serving fathers, know your rights, those elements together and the landing page speaking to it, that converts very well. And then within the search network, going a little deeper, we found that works very well as call only ads mobile. A mobile call only ad bypasses the click to a website. It actually, when you click on the mobile ad, it will prompt a phone call and ask you, do you want to call this number? You have to say yes, and then the call initiates. And if the person stays on for at least 15 seconds, in the Google Ads platform, that does count as a conversion. So the segmentation and then focusing on call-only mobile ads, that's been very powerful for attorneys.
Now, with call-only mobile ads, I mean, what if the person doesn't want to call? Like, is there a way for them to get to the landing page, or do you need two separate ads? One's a call-only mobile and one's a landing page, and then are you having them both show up for that search term, so you actually have two placements in the results?
Sure. So I still have ads that will be available for desktop even. They're going to go straight to the website, come to a landing page with an opt-in form to fill out. So we're just segmenting out. So I'll have the exact same father custody rights, mobile only call, and then father's custody for going direct to the website from desktop, and then also for mobile as well. And I work with all of those. But awesome. I'll be honest, because let's say an attorney is not going to have an unlimited budget. So let's say he's spending $3,000 a month, $4,000 a month to pay traffic. Every one of those is probably going to convert on some level. But over time, I can see which is converting better. And I'm going to put more money towards what has the better conversion rate, the lower conversion rate. So if I'm getting leads for $25, $40 on desktop, but I'm getting 50 on mobile, well, I'm going to shift more to my desktop so I can purchase more leads, because I'm really in the goal of acquiring opportunities. So I want to get as many as possible.
Now, there's a number of questions swirling around in my head, so I'm going to try to keep them, not lose track of any of them. But the first question is, in general, what percentage of the population is searching for their attorney in Google? I have to think that most people are going to first try to find somebody that they know has used before they go to Google and say, hey, I'm a nobody. I'm looking. We had a guy, Jim Armstrong, here on the podcast who talked about the experience. So he started something called Family of the Accused. It's a business to help people who have a family member that's accused of a crime. So his stepson was accused of a crime in a different state from where they live, and they had to then go and find an attorney. And he talks about what it was like to try to find that attorney and to meet with these attorneys while they're going through this emotional turmoil of the entire event. And it's a great episode. I encourage our listeners to go back and check it out. And we're going to link it up in the show notes. Because it really opens your eyes to what somebody might be thinking. Put yourself in your client's shoes to go back and see, like, what is it like on the other side of the table? So what can I do to make that experience different for them? But in his example, he's from a different state. He didn't know anybody there. So he was
Yeah.
limited to Google, right? They searched on Google, they came up with some people, and then they made phone calls, and they limited it, they narrowed it down based on the calls that they made, and then they met with people. And when you're within your area, chances are that a lot of that business is going to referrals. So just at the basic level, like, is there a way to figure out what the value is of actually having this ad show up? Like, you know, with somebody who's spending $4,000 or $5,000 a month, what can they expect as far as, you know, number of clients that are generated from that?
Yeah, thank you for that. You know, advertising at the end of the day it needs to produce a return on investment. So what's funny for me is, let's say I was the Smith Barney guy and I was your investment advisor, and I came back at the end of the year and said, hey, I got 10% on your money. Right now, I typically return 300% ROI to clients. And they're like, how can we get a little more out of this? Yet if I was the Smith Barney dude, I got you 10%, you'd be like, oh, this guy's amazing. So it's very funny when I'm in advertising and I'm like, you do realize, like, this is incredible. Like, if you want to get more, you have to invest more. What's very unique for attorneys,
Michael, I got to jump in here because, you know,
sure.
I'm going to lump you into the marketer bucket. You marketers have a very interesting form of mathematics. You know, if you spend $1,000 on ads and you generate $3,000 of traffic of business to me, right? That's your 300%. That's what you're referring to, right? So, but that's $3,000 in revenue. I still have to produce the work. I still have to run my business. I still have to, you know, so I can't spend that large of a percentage of my revenue on marketing per se, right? So to if it's just money that's being put to work that generates a percentage and then I keep the percentage, then it's a good comparison. But I don't think that that's a fair comparison to say, hey, you know, if you're going to invest in the market, you're going to get 10%. Invest with me, you get 300%. I do think this is a good conversation for us to have, because what is the right target, right? You know, honestly, I think if somebody allocated 33% of their budget to marketing, they'd have a pretty poor business model. And I'm coming in at it from, I'm the accountant, right? I know what the rest of the numbers look like. So I'd be looking for more than that. I'd be looking for a 4x return at a bare minimum to even say this is worthwhile. But that being said, I led with a different question. I don't want to go down the wrong rabbit hole here. The first question is are enough people searching and making decisions from that search that it's worth investing in? That's the first question.
That will only be determined by the tracking. So someone needing a service is going to be an inventory thing now, meaning there's only so many people in a state, in a city that need, let's say, estate planning services or child custody services. We can't create additional demand. The demand is there. So if that person now if a firm is getting referrals, investing in search advertising is not going to take away from referral business. And referrals have to come from a client base. So the value of a client coming into your pool of client base also potentially can create future referrals to come from that as well too. So there needs to be something stated of that. If we do have an inventory out there that's actively looking for a service, to neglect that because I got referrals, well, then someone else is going to pick those up and deal with those. And to speak about the ROI, return there, it's not like, hey, 3 times on the money and that's it. No, I mean, I have fluctuating months where some months it's 2,000% ROI. We were able to knock one out of the park. I have a client that called us last month. He does landscape lighting. And he spent about $4,000 a month in advertising. And he's like, dude, you guys knocked it out of the park, made $100,000 this month through the leads that came in. And when COVID initially hit, he was so happy with our services. He says, I'm going to take a month off of vacation just to see what happens. Initially, when this whole thing struck, he says, you can keep billing me because you've generated that much revenue for me. And that's more than 300%, obviously.
Right.
I need to be very cautious in the numbers that I state. But that 10%, I know what you're saying is correct too about, hey, someone has to perform work. I get it. But at the end of the day, we're generating more than a 10% net revenue from these services of what's happening. But to go back to your
Right.
question,
Let me ask you, Michael, let me ask you this question. Is there a way to measure a market to know whether this market is ripe for me to pay for search ads? Like how do I know if people are searching, if people are, if the inventory is there? I mean, you said you got to make
sure.
sure the inventory is there. Is there a way to know that before running ads and then just looking at analytics afterwards, after spending the money and not getting the results that I want?
Yeah.
Is there a way to do that work beforehand?
There's, you know, there are Google tools that will give you a forecast of what historically has happened. I don't use those for professional services because either the inventory is there or it's not. Either it's there or it's not. So let's say somebody says, okay, let's start with $1,000 and see what's out there inventory wise. I'm going to go very narrow focused for my search advertising, where I'm only targeting people specifically looking for those services. And so I know that the traffic that's coming over is targeted because I also have access to what's called a search term report. And I'll give it to the client and I'll show them, here's all the search queries that generated a click that you paid for. So do these align and fit? And if they don't, then we start suppressing keywords to keep those other queries out. From there now, we're going to generate an average cost of a lead. And this is the part that's very important for the firm, is that the person filling the call needs to have a systematic script they use and be trained to track and ask the questions, because I want to know, do we wind up booking a retainer for someone that came from a Google search, Google ad that came in from that? I can track in terms of my landing pages, but what ends up happening to that person, I don't know unless the attorney shares the information with me. So then from there, we look back on a 3-month basis and say, okay, you paid Google this much money, you paid us this much money, your total amount in investment is this, what did you book now in terms of retainer? And from that decision, the firm and the companies decide if they wish to keep working with us. Being in business 8 years, I have no clients on contract other than month to month. So I could lose my whole business overnight. And I push clients to look at those numbers because I found that actually keeps me in business with them, as opposed to leaving it to emotions. And how do you think we're doing? Like, I don't care how someone thinks I'm doing. I need to specifically know, here's what we spent, here's what was generated.
Let me share an exciting tool that I recently came across that is a game changer for law firms that bill hourly or by the project, otherwise known as flat fee billing. The 2020 Legal Trends Report published by Clio rates how important various items are in a client choosing your firm. You may be surprised to know that the third most important decision factor for someone choosing a lawyer is the ability to pay with a payment plan. The challenge that law firm owners face is the risk of a client not making good on that payment plan. Most attorneys don't offer payment plans because of that. The problem is now solved with LawFunder. LawFunder allows you to easily add a payment option to all your client invoices and retainer replenishment requests that does not require credit checks, applications, or any other complex process. The client's able to use their existing credit cards, allowing them to earn points and miles, access credit card specials on interest rates, and any other tools they use to manage their cash. When I saw this tool, I was blown away. Most importantly, it removes all the risk from the law firm and makes an easy and painless process to the payment process. So if you want to check off the box on one of the top factors in new client decisions, if you want to decrease your accounts receivable and get paid immediately, LawFunder is the solution. Go to lawfunder.com. That's lawfundar.com/profitwithlaw to learn more.
Right. Yeah. One of my clients deals with, they do traffic ticket defense. So it's a very high volume, low ticket business, right? Each client is only worth a few $100s, and they need to get a lot of clients through the door to be successful. One of the issues that they are dealing with is attribution, right? How do I know where this person came from? And what happens is a lot of times, they'll get a phone call in the firm and they say, "Oh, how'd you hear about us?" And they'll be like, "I don't know. I found you on the internet." Right.
Yeah.
So we don't know, did it come from an ad? Which ad did it come from? And all of that stuff. How much of this is being left to tools to tell us, and how much of it is being left for the firm to try to pry out of the client? And at what point do you say, we're not going to get enough data to get this feedback, and we have to look at other things like, are we on the right trajectory as we increase our ad spend and stuff like that? How do you navigate that in a way that you're making good business decisions and not losing opportunities?
I found you on the internet, and I found you on the internet statement is extremely common, and that's something I've had to just come to accept. What I recommend, and if I own a law firm, what I would be doing is my Instagram, my Facebook, my Google Ads, every one of those platforms, I would be sending to a unique URL. So it's still part of my website, but it's / something. And then when they go into my CRM, I would have them tagged of where they came from. So then when I have the names that go in, and when someone becomes a client, I would have them tagged and say, okay, this person did come in from Instagram. This one came in from Google. What that doesn't help us though is on phone call, because if someone on phone call states that. But
exactly. And so many people are not going to the landing page, or when they get there, they're not putting in their information because it's easier to pick up the phone and call. And now you're going to say, well, use something like CallRail. The biggest challenge there is firms want to have a number that people remember. This is my firm's phone number. So they're always going to have their number on the main places, like on Facebook, on their Facebook profile, on the top of their website, things like that. They're always going to have the phone number that they want people to remember. This is our main phone number. And then in ads, they can have the click to dial is like a CallRail number that they can track and see, oh, this phone call came from, this ad. But how do you navigate that?
Well, CallRail has attribution if you set this up with a piece of code where I get a report that tells me if the call was generated through Google Organic, Google Paid, Bing Organic, or Paid. So that's a big deal, first and foremost. Secondarily is I would challenge the statement that, hey, we want to have our clients remember our phone number. I don't believe that for anything. People can't even remember their, let's say, mom's phone number. It's built into their phone. We don't remember the last place you order pizza from on a weekly basis for your kids. No one knows that number. You just push a button. So to trade I want someone to remember my number for attribution tracking would be silly. So attribution tracking needs though to be set up. It's a custom setup in CallRail. Otherwise, it's just a phone call that came in.
Got it. Okay. So there are tools in the toolbox to try and get this information. And then on top of that, we are hoping that if we ask them, we find out, but it's obvious to a lay person that if I found you in a search and I clicked and I called, that I wouldn't know whether I clicked on an ad or I clicked on a search result, right?
That's true. That's true.
As a consumer. Now, you might say, hey, did you go to my website when you clicked, or when you clicked, did it just prompt you to call me? And then you would know, okay, this was, this came from a click to call ad, right? Because you're not going to get the click to call in your search results. But there's so many other possibilities. Was it my Google My Business profile? Was it the map pack? Was it, there's so many different places that they can get that phone number from.
This is where the attribution CallRail is extremely helpful, because it's going to list the phone number and the name of the person and the source of paid versus organic, and which search platform as well too.
Right. Yeah. So you got to have the right tools. Okay. So I want to step back in the conversation here.
Yeah.
First of all, as a agency, I know every agency has different metrics, but what's the minimum monthly marketing spend somebody should be ready to pay for it to be worthwhile to work with you particularly?
Yeah, the golden question that I get on all my sales calls, absolutely. To be fair to your audience, let me address them. I'll address that question of local loop marketing, but I'll also address it as they're out there making their own decisions. I would say that
I'm going somewhere else with this question also. So yes, definitely do that. But there's a real question that I want to ask that needs this input first.
Gotcha. Okay, so to work specifically with us, local loop marketing, the criteria I'm looking at is we work with firms that are doing at least a minimum of $1 million a year in revenue. and they're going to wind up spending for us to move the needle, where I find here's where move the needle with someone, they're going to be spending about $6,500, and that's all in with paid traffic and then services.
Okay. So what they should expect to get what level of return at that? I mean, at 6,500, what kind of revenue at a minimum should they expect to be generating off of that spend? I know you can't make promises.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the question I was going to, by the way.
Sure. You know, remembering that like it's a two-part relay race. I generate the opportunities, I hand it off to them. They have to close it as well too.
Right.
They have to close. So therefore, I will track the opportunities we generate. I can give that to them. They need to track the same thing as well too. And that needs to be a decision for them if they want to keep working with us. So the part that I put my reputation on the line, if you will, is where I say, I'm not going to bind you to a contract. I do say you should at least give this 3 months to work with prior to happening. But if you don't do this, you have two other options to go with. One, let's just be honest, I would say it's Scorpion marketing, which is the very large law firm marketing out there. You're going to pay a lot for those services. But keep in mind, no agency can create more opportunity for you because it's limited by inventory. So I would say you're probably better off investing more on buying opportunity, the traffic, than you are paying for higher services. It's only out there so much. The second thing would be, well, let's bring it in-house and hire someone. So if you do that and you consider salary, benefits, insurance, that single person is not able to perform everything needed. They're going to in turn now go and hire other professionals to work with. So in reality, your cost is even much higher than it would be hiring an actual agency to work with, because you're essentially getting, all of these professionals for the price of a single employee. So you have these options there, but what we do know, once again, is that people are searching for this. And at the end of the day, the tracking needs to tell its own story. Like, should you stay doing this or not? And it should be profitable for you. So for yourself, where you'll say, Moshe, you say, hey, I got to be maybe at 700% ROI, 1,000% ROI for this to make sense. Well, great. Now we know your threshold of where thing needs to be. And then to be fair to everyone, we should then, as the agency, hear back from you monthly. Here's what we closed. Here's what it booked at. And then we're on the same page. And we know now, okay, if we dip below this, we know we're potentially going to lose him as a client.
Right. No, that's all perfect. Very fair. And you're right. You make a really, really good point about what happens after the lead comes to the door. And I want to go there in a moment. But the reason I asked you about the investment with you, and you were very clear and articulate as to who you work with, right? You got to be at $1 million in revenue. You got to be willing to spend $6,500 a month. And there's definitely firms out there that are at that level. But what if somebody is less than $1 million or they're not ready to spend $6,500 a month? Now, you and I both know that they can get started for a few $100s a month, right? But they're not going to find a marketing agency that's going to work with them and get meaningful results at a few $100s a month. So the question is, at what stage in your business, as you're growing, should you consider getting involved in paid advertising? And it's almost like the chicken or the egg, right? Because if I believed that $6,500 a month of spend would produce $25,000 a month of business, right? Then I shouldn't have to be at $1 million in revenue to take that trip with you. I should just need to know that I have $20,000 in the bank that I'm ready to spend for the first 3 months till I start getting those clients through the door, right?
Yeah.
So, and I encourage my coaching clients that when you're planning your future, you have to look 12 months down the road and say, where do I want to be in 12 months? And then you have to imagine, what are you doing 12 months from now that produced that result? And you have to start doing that today. So if my goal is to be at $1 million in revenue, tracking $1 million in revenue, which is, what is it, 83,000 and change a month in revenue that I have to be doing. If I want to be there 12 months from now, then maybe I should be spending the $6,500 a month now, or the $10,000 a month now to get to 83,000 a month 12 months from now. So I don't think necessarily that you have to be where you are. Maybe they have to be there with your criteria. But my question is the people who aren't there yet, how do they navigate the gap? how do they go from I'm only getting business from referrals or some organic reach that I have with my Google My Business profile and my various listings in the different directories, to now I'm being strategic about going out there and getting the leads that are floating in search, and getting them. And do I have to now figure out how to do this on my own? Like what's the there's that disconnect, right, between where I need it to where I'm able to afford it, or align myself with somebody who can do it for me. And how is a law firm owner going to navigate that gap?
So what I would advise is they should reach out to an agency, let's say like mine or someone else, and say this, I would like to engage on this basis first. And this is what we actually do as a first step with everyone is I want to see a custom plan for my firm based upon what you think we should be doing all in. Like, I have unlimited budget. What should we be doing all in? But know in advance, I don't plan to do all those things. Make the plan for me so I know where I'm headed. And then let me know what are my 1 or 2 priority items that I should be doing first. So they essentially start moving through a plan. I began the agency working with people that were not a fit at that level. And unfortunately, the problem I found was that, yes, you can do some marketing for, like, let's say $500 a month, $1,000 a month, all in. You can do that. But your expectation needs to also be at that level too, versus expecting the results of the $6,000, $10,000 a month. So if you think long-term, like, I'm going to build out a marketing program that in a year or 18 months, I want to be at this level of doing everything, and I know what everything consists of, you're okay starting off with a few cherry-picked ideas. And what those should be focusing on would be building out a campaign in search focused around your highest revenue generating service. So if that practice amongst all your practices, estate planning or probate, okay, I would reach out to an agency and say, A, I want the full marketing plan. I'm going to pay for it. What do I need to do fully so I know where I'm headed? B, what would you guys charge just to set up a single campaign for me to do this? And then leave it to me, like, because that agency is not going to want to, manage that ongoing basis. But then that market, that business owner now could turn around and go to, like, let's say an Upwork and find a Google Ads professional. And he could tell that person, can you consult with me maybe every other week for the next 6 weeks? And let's look together at this. Tell me what I should be looking at. So the business owner starts understanding the data that's coming through. But they have now this campaign built out by an agency that's part of a bigger plan overall. Mm-hmm. And then as they progress, they can go back to that plan and start building further things out from that. That's how I'd approach it.
Yeah. It's interesting because this is it's a tough spot that we're in, because, I'm advising clients, right. And they're, at the beginning, when I first started working with them, I was like, okay, here's where you could go to learn how to do this. And then I realized that that's not really the best use of their time. That they should not be, you should know how to understand what's happening in your paid advertising. You should know how to get the data if it's not coming from an agency of what's going on. But you shouldn't try to become a Google Ads professional in the effort of bringing in new clients. Like, your time is money. This is information that is not necessary for you to learn or have or waste your brains on. So this has been a quandary that, I still struggle with it. I don't know how to advise my clients what the right direction to go is, because I don't have a marketing agency to stick them into. I can give them the education. I can sell them an information product on how to do it, but I don't think that's the right step. I don't think that the right thing is for them to do it themselves. So it's almost like, hey, I got to find a marketing agency that's willing to take on a fledgling baby client, or I got to do it myself. But I like your recommendation. I think that's a great idea to go for. The other thing is to just do a lot of due diligence on who you're choosing and truly believe in their ability to get results, and then make a real investment in your marketing. The other challenge that you have is you're used to getting these referral cases in, you're used to doing a certain level of work. And when you start getting in a ton of leads, you have a new problem and you have to be ready for that problem. So not ramping up slowly to that point might end up causing you to be inundated with more leads than you know how to handle. Maybe you don't have a process to follow up with everybody properly. So you're paying for the leads, but you're not converting them. And then maybe you're converting the clients, but now you don't have enough attorney bandwidth to be able to push all those clients through. Your customer service suffers, you start getting negative reviews, and everything falls apart. So you really need to be careful. Rapid growth is not always good growth if you're not ready for it.
Totally. To speak to that, as far as the strategy I laid out there, I want to put this in perspective too, is what I'm saying is that you're not doing anything because the agency builds out the campaign, gives the strategy to you, probably give you a little video explaining what it is, no work on your part. Getting the Google Ads professional to work that account for you twice a month for an hour, and you're there watching, asking questions, that 2-hour investment that you're doing to be with them is a well worth time investment, not per se to learn Google Ads, but it keeps you out there 24/7 with traffic going and you understanding what's possible and hopefully picking something up opportunity wise here or there. There is no getting around that gap of, hey, I'd rather not be doing this. Well, someone's got to do it and someone has to finance it. And I used to early on, clients would say, hey, if you work with me and we grow, then I'll do more business in the future. And I used to do that, but then I realized, wait a second, I am already taking on the risk of my own business. I shouldn't be now risking your business too, and so forth. So either one has to decide, is that lever of, am I going to put more time into this or more revenue into this? But it has to slide one way or the other.
Yeah, absolutely. And I teach that as well. So I show a graph of time and money and the different types of marketing you can do and where they fall on the scale. And you have to figure out, do I have more time available? Do I have more money available? And then based on that, you choose where you're going to focus your efforts. But that's not specific about search or paid traffic. There's all the different options are in there. Like radio advertising, it's up there on the money scale, down on the time scale. It doesn't cost you any time unless you're doing the recording yourself, which I don't recommend. Get a professional voice to do it for you. Nobody's gonna know the difference. So, but that's just put some money behind it and do that long term, and eventually it's going to pay dividends or billboards, stuff like that. So those are the no time and a lot of money. This definitely requires time, even if you have an agency working for you. You got to be on top of it. You got to know what's going on. You got to be able to track it. You got to be able to have these conversations. So it's really important. I want to circle back to the conversation that I said we're going to get to, which is the conversion conversation. So you do a great job of driving leads to a law firm. Right now, there's two different pieces to this conversation. So one is the firm's skill set and capability to be able to take the lead and run with it to the point where they convert it into a client. And the law firms, in my experience, the law firms that are running well, they tend to be at a 50% conversion rate. Is that what you're finding? Like every two people they have a consultation with, one of them is becoming a client. Does that sound in line with what you're experiencing in the marketplace?
For law firms, yes.
Yeah. So, but then there's a lot of moving pieces that could affect that. Perhaps you are not doing good follow-up. Perhaps you don't have a good strategic way of getting somebody to the consult. Depending on your market, maybe they don't have the resources to get to the consultation. Maybe they don't have the way to put together all the information that you need for the consult. Maybe you're charging for the consult and your market needs to be free consults. Maybe you're making a free consult and your market needs to be charging for the consult. So there's a lot of things that can happen. And maybe you're just a poor salesman, right? You're sitting in the conversation and you have the solution for them, but you're getting all attorney on them and you're telling them all the legal stuff you're going to do, but all they need is somebody to smile at them and say, don't worry, we're going to take care of you. It's going to cost you $4,000 and all you got to do is write us a check and your life is solved. But instead, you're going into the nuances and details of the legal actions you're going to take, and you lost them at hello, right? So that's on the attorney side. The other piece of it is the quality of the leads coming in. And this is what I found is that a lot of times when you go into search and you start putting that in, you get a certain caliber of people that are, the bottom of the barrel, the people who are looking for, they don't care who solves their problem for them. They don't care what your expertise is, how many cases you've won, whether you serve coffee in your office. All they care about is, am I going to pay you 5,000 or am I going to pay you 4,000? Right? The Walmart shoppers for attorneys. The feeling that I've received from some of my clients is that depending on the practice area, there's some of those are getting those kinds of leads from Google. How do you control that? How do you help them find the right leads, or is it just a filtration process once the lead comes in?
Yeah. So what comes to mind is when I think of personal injury attorneys as an example. And I have an attorney right now that he wants to work strictly with cases that go to litigation. He's not trying to take the standard $3,000 to $5,000 case. He wants high litigation. There's going to be a loss of a limb, loss of life, high property. But then with that, there has to also be the insurance limits are there to tap into. Maybe there's an umbrella, or they had higher limits. So those are things that you really can't do a setting in Google Ads for and say, make sure I only get leads from people that have high insurance limits. There are pieces of information that are beyond the platform. What you can do to help yourself is this. One is on landing page to set up the ability where they're gonna tick some certain questions like yes or no before they proceed. And this would be a self-filtering process where we're gonna save time from that lead progressing for the firm to contact them. So if it doesn't fit the criteria, then we're gonna say, you know what, hey, thank you for your inquiry. Someone will get back to you. And typically I find these agencies and firms will refer those smaller leads out to someone else. And then they're looking to get the big referral for those smaller people back to them in the future. So they can just save the time in the conversation from that. That's one filtering process. The second, to be quite honest, is going to be that the law firm understands you're going to get those kinds of leads. But part of the process of finding that nice diamond is going to be, you're going to have to go through a series of those to get that. There is never like the perfect setting of a platform, because Google won't prevent someone that, is just kind of snooping around or kind of curious, or maybe is even curious about their current, let's say, partner, like we're dating, but my wife's going to child custody. So I'm going to do a search on her behalf and book a consultation, but I come to find out I'm not even any sort of legal rights to the child. They're going to say, hey, yeah, we're not going to talk to you about this. I wasted time, but I was filling out the form and doing all this. So
right.
I would say that the form itself needs to ask deeper questions, and it needs to self-filter whether it's going to kick them out or route them in immediately. And lastly is being available after business hours. So if you have your ads route to a cell phone that's designated just for business, and that it's coming from your Google Ads only, that's really important to have, because people are going to make these calls outside of their business hours. And I find that in the call rail, I would see a lot of calls go to voicemail continually. And I think, well, we'll never know now if that was going to be a good lead, because that person wants to find someone to talk to immediately.
Right. Yeah. So I'm going to plug one of our partners that we work with all the time, Smith AI. So Smith AI is a reception service. And one of the things that they do is they pick up the phone for you 24/7. They allow you to put onto Google that you're open 24 hours a day. And this way, when somebody calls, that call is getting answered by a live person who's able to take that basic information, or able to ask those questions manually and do that filtration process for you. Smith AI is amazing with what they do. All of their receptionists are here in the States, so you're not worried about them sounding like they're somewhere else in a different country. And they do great work. They also, they'll put a chatbot AI on your website, to be able to have interactive conversation with somebody who just lands on your website. If you want to check them out, you get a free chatbot set up and a free I think it's free 20 calls. And actually they have like a 50% off discount right now going on. I don't have the details in front of me, and it might be over by the time that you hear this recording, but regardless, there's some extra stuff that you get when you mention us. Just mention code PROFITLAW100, PROFITLAW100, and take a trial with them. Try it out. It's free to try because you get the free X number of calls and you've got the free setup. And I think you get $100 off of your first paid month of service with that code. Unless they're running that 50% discount, then that's a better deal. But definitely use that rather than, you don't want to be tied to calls coming in 3 o'clock in the morning. You have to answer the phone. So even if you're a solo, you definitely want to use somebody like Smith, who's going to be able to have that call answered by a live, pleasant individual who can then route the call appropriately based on the time of day and whatnot. But you can ask those questions. You can give them the script to find out where that person find out about you and how relevant of a lead they are. So thank you for giving me the chance to highlight Smith there. This is all great. The last thing I'm going to ask you is do you get involved with the sales conversation? In other words, if you have somebody you're working with and you're throwing leads their way and their conversion just sucks, do you tell them, hey, look, your conversion's not good. Let's talk about your sales process and help them in that process to try to fix it so that you don't look bad? Or do you just say, look, I don't think we're going to be able to get you good results because we can send you all the leads we want. If you can't convert them to sales, it's just going to make us look bad. We shouldn't work together.
Yeah, that's a good question. One thing I look at prior to working with someone is I want to see the reviews on Google My Business specifically. And if I find that there's a consistent theme of this person, because not everyone is built out for customer service, and that's different than providing a service. How you go about that service is a big deal too. That's usually a red flag to me, as is the way they work with, let's say, my team and speak to them. I do fire clients, and I'll fire a handful every year on that basis. And it's not something I'm happy to do, but I look at this as it needs to work for me as well, because I have a certain, time that I work with someone typically. And right now it's years, it's like 5 years on average. It'd be longer, but my shorter clients have dwindled that time down. As far as the sales, if hey, you guys need help with your sales conversion rates, that comes up when the conversation happens on, they'll tell me, hey, this really isn't working out, the ROI, and it's going to be tied to their sales. So we'll say, okay, what have we closed? And if that's low, I would address with them and state, well, what is your conversion rate? There's only so much we can do as far as our lead generation, but if their conversion rate is going to be in that 20% or lower range, then there's a problem on sales that they have. And the place that I usually find it's taking place with is going to be at the quote unquote front desk, getting the phone call. And it's then that I would say, what do you think about actually turning on the recording feature of call rail? It's going to alert the person too, this call's being recorded for quality assurance. And then I advise that the owner needs to listen to these calls, because what I find is that the person answering the phone, it's weird, but all that money being spent for leads for a phone call, and the person acts annoyed when they pick up the phone.
Right. They're rude. They're obnoxious. It's like they're doing you a favor to be on the phone with you. It sounds like you can tell from the tonality that they just don't want to be there with you right then. Absolutely.
And at that point, I can't train that. I'll even tell them there's best practices I can give you, but I will say that's a hole in your bucket right there. That needs to be addressed. And then typically what I hear is that, well, they've been here a long time. They're really instrumental. They do a lot of other stuff besides the phones. The phone was kind of an extra thing added on there because they're great at filing. They're great at assistant work or my paperwork. And the phones was just this added thing they've given them when it should be a dedicated thing. And I would say, well, keep them then in that role, but you should then hire someone specifically for your phone calls. And maybe that is the service that you're speaking of, if they can be prepped with certain questions to ask prior.
Yeah. And I strongly recommend that even if you have a dedicated person, you still have somebody like Smith, because guess what? The person you have that you vetted, that's trained, that's doing a great job at the front desk, they also have work hours. They also have times they're on the phone and can't answer the next call. They also have times they go to the bathroom or take a lunch break, and they also have times that they're sick and on vacation. So you want to make sure that you have that call getting answered all the time. One of the interesting things is the Clio Legal Trends Report of 2019. So not the most recent one, the one before that. They did a study. They called 2,000 law firms, and they acted like they were a client looking for legal services. And they said that 64 to 67%, I forget what the number was, but it's basically 2/3 of the attorneys that they reached out to, they either never answered the phone, or they left a message, never got a call back, or they never got a call back after the initial conversation. 2/3.
Yeah.
So that highlights that, all you got to do is answer the phone and return their call. That's it. And automatically you are 2 times better than every 3 law firms out there. And it's ridiculous that how easy it is. But we just, for some reason, in professional services, legal firms specifically, it's not a focal point. And it's a shame, because you work so hard for your reputation. You work so hard to bring those leads in, and then you just don't do a good job of making sure that you have a good process, a good sales process. It's my opinion that sales should be done by a salesperson, not by a lawyer. Now, it could be that the lawyer is a good salesperson, but the lawyer should be doing the legal advice part, and the salesperson should be selling the client. And I understand that in a consult, the legal piece might need to be done, but the reality is it probably doesn't. You probably can have a salesperson in the front and not talk about the legal aspects of the case at all, and just talk about the situation and how you can help solve the situation, and get them as a client before they even have a conversation with an attorney. Now, there are definitely times that they have to have a conversation with an attorney. It depends on your practice area, your business model, is situational. But at that point, so then you book them for a paid consult with the attorney, or you bring the attorney in for 15 minutes to hear the details, and then tell the salesman what's required, and then walk out. And now the salesman is left to finish and seal the deal and get the paperwork signed. So, if you're at $1 million in revenue, you should have a salesperson on your staff. If you're at 500,000 in revenue, you probably should have a salesperson on your staff. Below that, you probably can't afford it. I get it. Then you gotta wing it. You gotta figure it out yourself. But attorneys have it in their mind that they need to be the one selling the client, and sales and legal advice are 2 different things. And that could be the missing link there as well.
There's a personal injury attorney in my city, and he grew. It was like every year he was growing on $1 million a year in sales. And I asked him, I said, "What is it that you're doing?" And he had said, "Well, when the calls come in and someone takes the initial, if it's even somewhat of a fit, I tell everyone that they can talk to me personally on my cell phone, and he'll spend 5-7 minutes with every single person that's calling in that is somewhat of a fit, for that personal touch to them, and invites them to come down and meet him in person at the offices." He spent a lot of time on the phone, but it paid off. So the business model of, I don't really want to talk to anybody, I don't really want to invest in my marketing, but I want lots of sales, you're going to be competing against guys that do want to talk to you and that do want to meet you, and he does invest in his marketing. So at the end of the day, just because someone calls you, it's not a done deal yet, because they're probably going to talk to somebody else, or they've already talked to somebody else, and they're now juxtaposing that experience against those things.
Yeah, Michael, this has been a great conversation, and we could probably go on for a couple more hours.
Sure.
But we're out of time. I want to round out with this. Understanding that we have a variety of listeners. There are people who might just be getting started, and there are people who might be doing multi-million dollars of revenue a year, and they've all been listening to this conversation. They at this point, they at least know that you know what you're talking about, right? What is one parting piece of advice that you can give everybody that would be relevant to everyone listening, as far as their paid advertising, their lead generation, or just something that has to do with our conversation, what's one parting piece of advice you'd like to leave? And then please share with our listeners how they can take the next step with you if they want to get in touch or work with you.
Sure. So part of piece of advice is that you do need to get in the search game ASAP. So from listening to this show, you can actually sign up for a Google Ads account at googleads.com, do a search for Google Ads, if you will, and you can get a Google representative on chat or on the phone, and you can tell them, I want to set up one campaign for one service on Google search. This is my website, and I want to only spend $200 a month. Do that, and secondarily ask them, can you also show me where I can find the specific search queries that someone used that generated the click? So I kind of like my receipt. So I bought something, I paid for a click. What's my receipt? Your receipt in Google search is search term report query list, where you can actually see the search queries that came through. You want to see that. Very few clicks, they'll show you where to find it. Start there. Get in the game. Just get in the game first and foremost. That's the biggest piece of advice. And then from there, figure out what to do next, but understand that you want to start building out a program slowly, as opposed to, well, I'm going to start when I've got $7,000, $10,000 a month. Don't do that. Like, good marketing and good business is kind of like cart before horse. You have to get started to eventually have the money to do more. As far as, with us, Local Loop Marketing, and by the way, we've been Local Loop Marketing for 8 years. 2021, we're switching over to the name Client Converter. So we're going to be called Client Converter. Find us at theclientconverter.com. I'm happy if anybody wants to text me personally. So feel free to shoot me a direct text message at 213-267-1761. I've done this on podcasts before. Some of my longstanding attorneys, we met this way. They sent me a text message. I'm a real person. I love sales and I love what I do. So feel free to reach out to me. Even if it's just to ask a quick question, I'm happy to do that. If you want to extend deeper and say, I don't know if I'm ready for services yet, but I would love to just, get in a consult with you, kind of take the place of Moshe here and have a conversation with me. Let's talk about you. Reach out to me with your email address. We have a private link of where people can book a purchase consulting session with me. Those are paid. I have so many available per month, but that investment will save you a lot of time and headache, as opposed to going and just signing on a dotted line with an agency and saying, yeah, I'm going to sign up for 6 months or a year. We should probably talk first. It's not even to say work with us, but I'd like to see your situation and then advise appropriately.
Awesome. Michael, that's very kind of you. We're going to link all that up in the show notes, including your cell phone, which will now be publicly available on the internet for all to find. And everyone can text you if they so please. And I hope that your phone starts blowing up when this thing gets released. And you get a ton of value from it, because I know I got value, and I'm sure that the audience got value as well. Folks, if you've been listening and you enjoyed the show, make sure to hit the subscribe button so you get notified every time we release a new episode. And don't forget, the Law Firm Growth Summit is coming up. It's 3 days, February 9th to the 11th, and it is going to be epic. It's going to be amazing. I guarantee you it's going to be the best money that you've invested in yourself for the year. You want to go right now, because prices go up on Monday. lawfirmgrowthsummit.com. Grab the ticket that makes sense for you. There's 3 different ticket levels. You can start with an all-access pass, which is very affordable. The VIP levels in the middle. It'll give you the recordings and also a physical swag bag that we're shipping to you. And then there's the premium, and that's for the people who want that concierge level experience, backstage access to the speakers and stuff like that. lawfirmgrowthsummit.com. Hope to see you there. We're here twice a week, every Tuesday, every Thursday, releasing new episodes for you. Make sure that you're subscribed to Profit with Law, and we will see you soon.
That's it for this week's episode of Profit with Law. If you have enjoyed the show, please consider sharing it with at least one person. Imagine how many lives we can change if we each shared this episode. Another way to share the episode is on social media. We appreciate your support and look forward to you joining us again next week.